My name is Jamie, and I am the Family Engagement Specialist here at Child Care Answers. And we have been doing this diversity learning series, and it has been a series just focused on diversity in early childhood, spanning from age 0 all the way into your school age children as well. Just learning how we can support families and learning how we can support children of all races, of all ethnicities, of all makeup. So today is our last in the series, and we are having a guest presenter, Becky Reich, and she is from the Alliance for Diversity of Hendricks County. And so I am actually just going to let her share about who she is and what she does and take the reins.
Perfect. Thank you, Jamie, so much. Hi, everybody. I am Becky Reich. I will give you, and everything is not moving. There we go. A little bit about me. I am a mix of a lot of things. I am the chair of the Hendricks County Alliance for Diversity. That's probably what mostly brings me here today. I'm on our district equity team at Brownsburg Community Schools. I'm a DEI consultant and the capacity building director at Marion County Commission on Youth, which is a intermediary nonprofit in Marion County. I'm a parent to 3 boys and a grandparent to 1. More about me, what makes me, what's part of me. I'm a former teacher. My parents were foster parents. I'm adopted, had 4 siblings. Grew up in a little teeny tiny one-stoplight town and moved to Indianapolis for student teaching in 2004. Currently live in a suburb. I mentioned Brownsburg, but I work in the city. I like to throw all those things out there because I think it's important to know we're not just our titles, but each of us comes with a variety of experiences that kind of build us to who we are today. And I think that's important context as we head into this conversation. I'm sharing with you one of my all-time favorite quotes. This is kind of what guides me. It's the reason I serve in the nonprofit world and the work that I do here in Hendricks County. A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives. So I consider myself a servant leader, and this is where I kind of use that to guide my direction. And we're going to be talking a lot today about how you can raise your kiddos to impact the lives of others in a variety of ways. And I'm going to start right out the gate with a common misconception. Those of you that maybe have heard me talk before, this is something common that pops up, that kids are too young to talk about some of these topics. And they're too young to talk about race. They're too young to understand oppression or diversity or any of these things. So let's just get that one right out of the way. They're not. No, they're never too young. If you look at some of the ages that come up here at birth, babies look equally at faces of all races. By 3 months, they look at faces that match the race of their caregivers. By 30 months, we get into children using race to choose playmates. By 4 or 5 years old, they're starting to use expressions of racial prejudice. If you look at the graphic in the middle, by 3 to 5 years old, children start showing bias based on race. So why is this important? This is important because these kiddos are in your home and you're raising them. And if we don't intervene with new information and how to use what they're seeing at an early age, then we miss that window and we've got to catch up. Or we're letting society teach them what race means or what value each human has based on race. And that's definitely not something we want to leave to others. So what do we do about it? We intervene with intention, which means, right, let's acknowledge the truth, which is that your kids are already noticing and thinking about race. Sometimes there's also the misconception that if we talk about it, you're going to create racism or create bias. The opposite is actually true. Since silence reinforces racism, then we need to talk, right? And this is where your role comes in. Families play a powerful role in helping children of all ages develop positive attitudes about race and diversity and skills to promote a more just future, right? So we can't just let it happen and hope that they figure it out, right? We got to intervene with intention. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So The name of this session is Raising Allies, Advocates, and Disruptors or Accomplices. So that's what we're going to talk about. Let's start first then with diversity. This is a diversity series after all, and we've had 2 sessions already, one of which was a panel conversation around some topics. And then Jamie did an awesome session last time on looking at diversity in your home. So what books and toys and media and languages are present? Are you representing a diversity of cultures, gender, traditions, all of those things in your home? Are you talking just about your holidays and celebrations, or are you also talking about how others have traditions and holidays and cultural celebrations? What does your surrounding look like? Who's coming into your home? Who's in your circle? Who's in your kids' circle, right? What playmates do they have? What experiences do they have? Are you looking for diversity when you choose youth programs or sports programs or activities, summer camps? All of those things are a great opportunity to introduce potential different experiences that don't look like your typical environment. So again, how can you create those experiences if they aren't naturally occurring in your home? And we're going to talk some about that. I like to throw this up here because sometimes we like to think as diversity as a very, very small list of things. And really, diversity by definition is the existence of difference. It's that simple. So looking at that wheel, right, we know the ones in the middle, but it's also a lot of other things, right? It's not just age or gender or race. It's parental status, thinking styles, education levels, work, employment, marital status, military experience. All of these things create who we are and provide diversity in our environments. I want to also touch on another term because you're going to see it. And I just want to make sure that everybody has kind of a baseline understanding and don't want to leave you behind if you don't. So bias is basically everyone has it. No matter if you have worked really hard to evaluate your own bias and do things about it, you still have it. I have been doing this for a decade and a half, and I still have biases. I work my best to confront them, to change them, to adapt to them. But most of all, I just am aware of them. And that's really important because what bias is basically an attitude or belief that you have about a person or a group of people. There's 2 versions of this. There's explicit, which is you are fully aware, which means they can be self-reported, self-regulated, and managed. Those are the easy ones to deal with because you know you have them. Implicit bias gets a little tricky. Those are the unconscious attitudes that lie below the surface that you may not even be aware of. A lot of times this is due to your upbringing, due to your experiences, due to information you're receiving from the outside world, create and reinforce bias every single day. So again, these are those unconscious ones, but regardless, if you know that they're there or not, they're going to influence your behaviors. So why is this important? It's important because you read this quote here, and I love the little eyes from the back of the head to the front. Everything you look for and all that you perceive has a way of proving what you believe. So if you have a bias, you're going to see it, right? And so then the next step is, what do you do about it? And that's really the important step, is not to feel bad because you know you have one, or try to pretend you don't. It's just to be aware and then work to make sure that it's not negatively impacting someone else or a group of people. All right, so let's get into kiddos. How are we going to move kids into being an ally, a supporter? So we've started with diversity and experience and environment and a little bit of definitions. The biggest thing is empathy. Teaching kids to be empathetic humans is the game-changing baseline tool to make them care about other humans. So I'm going to talk about a few things, and this comes from Berkeley research. Professor Borba has some good information on kind of developing empathy in young children. So the very first one is to help kids develop their own moral identity. It goes to differentiate between being praised for a helpful act to being praised as a helpful person, right? So it's really getting into the value of that kid. And I like the quote at the end. It says, to respond empathetically, kids must see themselves as people who care and value others' thoughts and feelings. Missing that crucial piece leaves a huge void in a child's empathy quotient. So again, responding empathetically means they see themselves as people who care about others' values and thoughts. Give kids do-overs. This is a great, right? Building your own, seeing a different perspective, trying out someone else's shoes, right? So instead of just having a punitive, don't say that, move on, it's let's reflect on it, let's talk about it, right? So when a child speaks or acts in a way that's insensitive, there's a recommended 4-step process, and I love this, and it's called CARE, which is easy to remember, right? So we were insensitive, let's think about CARE. How could we have done this differently? And the first one then is call attention to the uncaring behavior. So what was the behavior? Number 2A is assess how the uncaring affects others and help kids to understand someone's perspective. This is huge. This later gets into then what your impact was, regardless of what your intent was, what was the impact of your insensitive act or your uncaring act. Number 3 is repair the hurt and make amends. And 4 is, as a parent, right, expressing the disappointment for the behavior and then stressing expectations for caring behavior in the future, right? There's always room to grow. None of us are perfect. So I'm sad that, you know, this behavior happened. How are we going to do it different in the future? All right. Number 3, encourage empathy through stories. I, as a former teacher, as a total book nerd myself, I think stories are the most valuable thing that kids can see. Made up stories, authentic stories, all of the above, play acting, reading books, all get a child into someone else's mind, whether that character is real or pretend. They're able to put themselves in a different situation than their own. And that skill by nature leads itself to empathy because it builds the ability to be in someone else's perspective, to see things from a different lens than their own. I love the quote at the bottom of this one, and the right book matched with the right child can be the gateway to opening his heart to humanity. I think that's such a powerful way to look at stories and books and what those bring to a child. Number 4, examine your values. Too often, right, it's the actions versus words, right? And we're pushing kids in this today's extremely competitive culture to focus maybe more on achievement than we are on just being a kind human, right? And so there's so much focus on academics and athletics and achievements, and I'm guilty of it too sometimes, right? I can't wait to post a picture of my kid's award on social media. Look at them, aren't they awesome? Look at this achievement. But we need to make sure that we are really praising and rewarding the kind behaviors and values that we're wanting to instill just as much as we are those more tangible achievements. So again, I love the bottom quote there. If we're serious about raising a kind-hearted and caring generation, our expectations must be a lot clearer to our kids. Understanding how kindness benefits children and gives them an advantage for success and happiness might be the motivator to change our own ways. Number 5, social media, right? Social media is a lovely little thing for us parents to navigate nowadays. I said nowadays, that makes me feel old. But it does, it takes away face-to-face encounters, right? And if we're teaching kids to be empathetic, they still have to get that practice time and being face-to-face with other humans to be comfortable in that face-to-face interaction, that immediate dialogue. Jamie and I actually were talking as we got on that apparently neither one of us have very good poker faces. So, right, it's those skills though that need to be built in, right? How do I respond with my words, with my facial expressions, empathetically in the moment so that I'm not causing harm? And number 6, help kids find their inner hero. And this uses a bullying example. But it says that a lot of times kids don't intervene because they feel powerless or they don't know what to do. They assume someone else will intervene, or that they won't get support from adults. So I see that last one there is something we can quickly change, right? If our kids know that we're going to support them when they want to find their inner hero or ally, then that's one of those removed immediately. And the other part there, we can teach them what to do. So that's something we can control as well. Again, the bottom quote there, mobilizing children's courage to be upstanders may be our best hope to stop peer cruelty, right? We know a lot of things happen in the peer-to-peer environment, and it's so important that we teach our kids, one, to not be the perpetrators of that harm, but also how to be courageous allies, advocates, or accomplices in that environment as well, because kids want to please their other peers as well. And so if their peers aren't entertained by the harm they're causing, they're not laughing with the harm they're causing, and they're getting a little bit of resistance or pushback, they're going to stop that behavior as well. Because we know a lot of times that negative behavior is actually attention seeking, right? It's a good way to stop that. So I want to show you too then. So we talked about 6 different pieces of empathy here. I want to walk through how that, sorry, my little face is in the way there, how that then connects to allyship. So looking at kids developing a moral identity, right? So if we talk then and help them develop who they are, how they approach the world and see it in their interactions with humans, it's going to reinforce that we're all individuals and we all have our own things that we're carrying with us, right? If I've got all of my things that develop me, then you've got all of yours too. And so I understand that, again, that perspective seeking piece. I also maybe start to see the concepts of fair or just, and how those are different from a moral standpoint. Number 2, giving do-overs using the care process. That is perfect real world practice in teaching kids how harm impacts others. And I mentioned it once already, but this becomes really, really important as they get older. If you've heard of like microaggressions are a great example, right? Sometimes the intent is not to harm, but the impact is harm. And so when you start to teach kids about the impact of their words or actions, regardless of what they meant and what their intent was, but that the impact was harmful, that helps them grow from being that ally into being the accomplice, into being these things, because they understand and can take themselves out of it and look at the situation in that way, right? Doesn't matter what I meant to do, my actions did this and it was a negative impact, it was a harmful impact. I'm going to do better next time. And so it helps them kind of evaluate it in that way, which is really, really valuable. Encourage empathy through stories, right? Of course, that's going to help see other views, even see similarities then amongst different people or different backgrounds, all of those things, right? We're a lot more alike than we realize. Also provides really good examples for discussion. So if you haven't had an opportunity to talk about care and use that process, use it with these stories. If there's an example in a movie or a book where someone causes harm, use that process then so that you can talk about it and as a real life example, or point out other real life examples and use that care tool, adding the why behind it. Examining your values, right? Kids want to please the adults in their lives. Those of you with teenagers might not always feel that all the time, I know, as a parent of teens myself, but they really do. And so leading by example, right? Your actions are louder than your words. So we can't tell our kids to do and be all of these things and be kind and not lead with example. The social media use, we already kind of talked about that, but I also think too, depending on the age and with monitoring it, social media can also be a really good tool for resources. There's some amazing humans out there sharing really cool content, some of which is just authentic content, right? What does it mean to be queer in this city, right? Or this space, or what does it mean to be a Muslim, or what does it mean to be, and you can learn, kids can learn from one another, right? It breaks down the barriers of area, right? So if you're in Hendricks County or somewhere maybe that's not quite as diverse, it breaks those walls down and all of a sudden you can interact with an amazing amount of people with all kinds of beautiful experiences that they're bringing to the table. So it can be a good tool. There's also a lot of really good stuff for adults on there, education-wise, people to follow and things like that. There's so much content out there now. And then number 6, help kids find their inner hero. And I actually crossed out hero and said ally. And the reason I did that is that hero kind of implies that somebody needs saving, right? And we're not saving anybody. We're just being kind, empathetic humans. We're just being an ally. And so you have to know how to do that for yourself, to be kind to yourself and to stand up for yourself. And then you can translate that then into standing up and supporting others. So empathy is not sympathy, right? It's not feeling sorry for someone or differentiating what's better or worse. Empathy is just simply understanding a different perspective or experience, and then understanding how that shapes all of us as humans. Empathy is really just a matter of seeing all of someone. All right, another big component that I think is crucially important for kids is seeking truth. Again, along the same lines of understanding experiences, understanding cultures, understanding where humans come from, you can't do all of that without also understanding history and the part that that's played in shaping our society, our rules, our systems, and the humans that lived through all of it. And sometimes we don't always get the maybe most accurate version. And so I think it's really important that parents dig into histories of any and everything that you can. And why do that, right? Past does not really stay in the past. The past is carried on with us. Sometimes the trauma lingers on. It impacts our emotions, our choices, our behaviors, depending on what that experience was. History provides understanding, right? It connects you with someone's humanity. It provides insight to who they are, or what experiences they carry with them that happened yesterday that impact them today. It connects the emotions and trauma of past things to decisions and emotions today. It helps break down your own bias. You might think something about someone, and once you understand the history of a culture or tradition or maybe historical harm that's been caused, you can understand things a little bit differently and realize that you were perhaps using a bias to judge something or someone when you didn't have all of the information. And so sometimes information can also dismantle your own prejudice or biased thoughts that you have just based on maybe information you didn't quite have yet. All right, so we are talking about then the path of being an accomplice. And so I wanted to kind of break it out like this so you can see what that means. And depending on the age of your kiddo, they're going to fall in different places depending on your experiences and knowledge and all of those things. So I just want to kind of walk you through the difference here so you can see what that looks like. So I would say really the first step is awareness, and that's not even on here. I presume that by nature of being on here with me and Jamie today, that there's some awareness that diversity is important, or you probably wouldn't be hanging out on a diversity series webinar with us. But so that first baseline of ally, right? This is a person who is aware of their privilege and their power. It's a person who's aware of inequities and is empathetic to those who experience inequity or unfair or unjust situations. Okay, then we get into an advocate. So that is then you're an ally, and you also are a person who draws attention to these inequities or social issues. You're a person who stands up for yourself or individuals impacted by inequities or someone without equal privilege to you. Okay, so now then on to accomplice, you would be an ally plus an advocate. And now in addition to those pieces, you're a person who actively and regularly works to dismantle the systems of oppression, right? So a higher level, let's not just help the individual, but let's bust this system down and work on making it better for everybody. You use your power or privilege to push those without it to the front, right? You elevate others' voices, you bring folks to the table that are missing from the conversation that need to be there, right? You use all of your tools to get voices heard and to get movement. And at the accomplice level, that means even maybe suffering some consequences for that behavior, right? It could be consequences like, you know, the uncle at Thanksgiving that you say something to that didn't appreciate it. And so now he's not going to talk to you next Thanksgiving. It may be as high a consequence as, you know, as an adult, right? It's job risking or it's some of those things. Now with kids, that's not going to be the case, but it might be losing a friend. It might be not getting invited over to a certain house anymore if you say something about a racist act that happens or something. And then the biggest piece with an accomplice too is that you bring others along to do the same thing. So you're looking to build and help others grow into being an accomplice as well. Along the bottom there, I tried to give just quick summary thoughts so you could kind of remember it, right? An ally is at that support level, right? I'm a supporter of this piece. An advocate is where you're amplifying a concern or issue. And then accomplice is really where you get into being an action agent for change. All right. So how do we grow from one end to the other? We're right back at it to seeking more knowledge, right? It's just a continuation. So you can't stop learning about diversity or equity, belonging, inclusion. All of these things take continued engagement and learning in the process. So that looks like continued seeking of knowledge. I threw a couple ideas up there, but there's a website that's one of my favorites, socialjusticebooks.org. They have about every topic you could possibly think of. And then it's also leveled by age, which is awesome. A lot of times we tend to kind of think about this from a picture book standpoint. When do we introduce this to kids? But sometimes we don't necessarily keep the learning going into the young adult readers, the chapter books. You know, I love reading young adult books when they come out with my kids. That's been one of our favorite things to do, is to read those and talk about them. So that's definitely one of my favorite things to do. I read a lot of things myself as well. So I'm committed to that learning process in a different way with them. So really, it's just, what gaps do you have? Right? So what gaps exist in your home or your circle or your experiences and opportunities, and then seek out filling those gaps with any form of knowledge out there, right? There's a million things. I wish that I had these when my kids were young. I really do. I can remember pulling out a whiteboard in our kitchen once, talking about, you know, the acronym LGBTQ and what does that mean? I had mentioned it. My kid said, "What is that?" And we whiteboarded it and we talked about what each of those meant. And this was probably in elementary school for them, right? So there's a lot better resources out there than a kitchen whiteboard. That would work too. I can remember sitting them down and showing them videos of white privilege that were meant for adults, but I helped them break it down. And so now, I mean, Sesame Street has social justice and race-based conversations, right? And all of these things, there's just a ton of stuff out there that you can really connect to. Okay, so how do we keep moving that needle, right? Again, that's the goal, just keep moving along that path and moving ourselves. You talk about it all. Talk about everything. Conversation is a great way. One, I'm a big proponent of honest conversations with my kids. I've always told them there's nothing I won't answer. I can't say that I'll answer it immediately. I might have to go do some research because I don't know all the answers, but I'm going to respond to you at some point. And so that's kind of a promise I've made to my kids, and they hold me to that. We've had some uncomfortable conversations or some ones that I'm really glad I'm in the front seat of the car and they're in the back and I don't need a poker face. But that's great because that means they're coming to me to seek out information. So they too have realized the importance of seeking knowledge. So how do we do that? How do we talk about it? We point out examples. If you see an example of an inequity or system or privilege, point it out, talk about it. And then there's an awesome list of questions there, and there could be a million more on there, right? But depending on their age, right? As simple as fair. Kids understand if something's fair, right? Toddlers throw a fit and say, that's not fair, right? Kids understand something that's not fair or not just. Then that turns into, right, as they get older, is this equitable? Are we purposely preventing someone from getting a certain opportunity in some way? Using a what if situation and putting them in the shoes. You know, what if I said someone with blonde eyes or blue eyes can never do blank? How would you feel? Well, they'd be pretty upset, right? And then explain what that means for other people. So someone with brown skin can't do blank, right? And so having those and flipping those conversations around and just talking about them, talking about who's missing from being represented, who benefits from this rule or this policy or this system, who's being harmed in the situation. As they get older, right, what ways do you see you have privilege that others don't in having your needs or wants or opportunities met? And we all have privilege in some way, right? And so it's just examining and how has that benefited you and who isn't getting that same opportunity or need met. We can talk about intersectionality. Then we can talk about who has the power, what system, and what can we do, right? So what can we do about it? That becomes the action side of it, right? So how can we be an ally or an advocate or an accomplice to make change to mediate any of these things, right? And at any point, you or your kiddo might be an ally or an accomplice or somewhere in the middle for any different situation or cause or inequity. You might know a lot about one and you're at that accomplice level and you are right there change making every day. And you might not know as much about some, but you're an empathetic human, you care, you want to support those individuals, right? And so for that particular group, you might be more of an ally, and that's okay to kind of gauge those in different ways. You can't be an accomplice for everything. We don't have enough hours in the day. I wish we did. I wish we didn't need accomplices, but so just understand you might kind of fall in different categories in different parts of the work as well. And so you're probably thinking, yeah, so what does that actually mean I do, right? How do I do this? What do I do? So in addition to the diversity in experience, right? And the exposure of experience, education, empathy, you just start. You start on yourself. You be transparent in the learning process. Be transparent when you don't know. Don't shut down conversations, right? When you're very young child, if you have a little white kiddo and they point and they say, "Mommy, a black person," instead of freaking out, say yes, right? Yes, that is a black human. And let's talk about it, right? Look at their beautiful skin compared to, your skin. Let's talk about people have different shapes. Talk about it. Sometimes we like freak out and, oh my gosh, they noticed because it's different and diversity is different and that's okay. So sometimes we shut that off, we get scared. So just be open and get ready to be uncomfortable and that's okay. And typically, even if somebody overhears this conversation, if they hear you trying to educate your kid, they're going to love it, right? I mean, it's a process that we're all in. And as long as your heart and your spirit are in the right place, trying to get your kid more knowledge, people understand. Because I think that's part of it too. We're scared to make a misstep, right? You're going to make a misstep, right? It's okay. I'm just going to tell you now, you're going to mess it up. You're going to mess it up little, you're going to mess it up big, and that's all okay. And share that with your kid too. Man, I really messed up and said this today. And what I meant was this, and here, share it. Just be transparent. Again, that gives them the ability to understand that like, it's okay to do these things and to make mistakes along the way. So again, yes, engage in conversations, make it a team effort, right? Do things together, learn together, volunteer together, set values for your home, right? I mentioned in our home, it's an expectation to serve others, to support other humans, right? So for example, one of our things we say around here is like, in this home, we love and serve all, period. There are no exclusions. We are servant leaders in our home and in our community, right? We make our home a place that everyone belongs, and we strive to make our community the same way. That's how the values in our house. Use opportunities for volunteering or participating and serving others, give them opportunities to lead in these things. Teach them about the systems, right? As they get older, help them understand the school structure systems, the justice system, the government systems. You can't expect kids to fight against them or to help break them down or understand policies or rules or any of those things if they don't understand the systems first. Teach them to use their voice for themselves and for others. And you can demonstrate this yourself too by standing up for yourself. Get involved, right? Especially when it comes to voting or things like that, right? Write or legislation, write letters, campaign, vote, tell them why it matters, even when they're told it doesn't, right? One person can make a difference. They really can. And so just help them keep pushing and believing that it's important. Meet the leaders in your community or county or state or other systems, right? Help them see what leaders do and the decisions they make, and that helps them understand the process, right? So then if I decide as a young person that I want to change something, I know the process and I know even the person maybe to go to. So help them meet those people and connect with those people and see that they're just humans too, right? So if they're just a human, like I am, like my parent is, like my sister is, right, then maybe I can work with that human to do something different and help them see a way to do better. Support their ideas. That's huge. Support it. They're not too young. Their voice does matter. Make sure that you're not the one at home stopping them from doing something that they want to do to make a difference. And it might be little, right? It might be, they may see something about sea turtles and straws and they get excited and they come home and they want to throw out every straw in your cabinet and ask you to buy reusable ones or never get a straw in a drive-through. Just do it, right? Show them right there the power of change. It can be that little and it may not make a huge difference. And you may know that maybe that one little change might not change the whole world, but what you're doing is reinforcing to your young person that they have power to do something different and to make change, as small as changing out something in your house or a small decision you make. Something we do a lot is I tell my kids all the time, I speak with money. I speak my voice with money. I don't donate to places that cause harm. I don't purchase things at places that cause harm. It drives my kids crazy sometimes because there's some certain places they really want that food and I won't give it to them. I will not give my dollars to them to use at that establishment. And so that's another way that I demonstrate and teach them to use their voice, right? There's a lot of ways to use voice. So I talked some about my kids. And so here's just to give you an idea of some of the stuff that my kiddos have been involved in. I'm hoping it just sparks some ideas, right? So this is my oldest. He's now 16, just turned 16, but he has been highly engaged in a lot of things. And what you have to do too is let your kiddos figure out what they're passionate about, right? So they may be passionate about a completely different thing than you, then help them find those opportunities and support them in that way. And that's okay. They don't have to care about the exact same cause or group of individuals that you do and you really want to fight for. You keep doing that and you're still leading by example to help them do what it is they want to do. So lots of pictures there, but this is my social kid. This is my outgoing, talk to everybody, social butterfly, right? And so a lot of the stuff he likes to do is that. He speaks to people, he campaigns, he door knocks. He's done it for school board candidates, for state candidates. He has an older brother that is Black. He has friends that are Black. So Black Lives Matter has become something that's crucially important to him because it impacts his family and it impacts his very best friends in the whole world. And so he's passionate about that. He likes going and doing things in person, right? So he's done collection drives and delivered those. He started a Spread the Word to End the Word campaign at his middle school. Volunteered for Best Buddies. So a lot of these things. So this is if social connection to any of these things, he is all in all the time. So that's how he likes to use his servant. So this is my younger kiddo. He's 14. This is Caden. So Caden is my quiet kid. So he is not as outwardly vocal about things like my older one. So he likes to do things behind the scenes. He's my one that will be logistics support for me in things. He'll help load a car, he'll drive it, he'll unload, but he doesn't want to talk to people when he gets there. Right. So that's something we recently did. The bottom there, you can see we did a huge donation drive for Camp Atterbury for refugees. He was all in as long as it wasn't talking to people, but he sorted. We had 2 rooms full of stuff. He sorted, he spent hours doing that stuff and dug right in. He loves animals. So he has decided that one of the ways he likes to give back is through rescue. And so we support a rescue, we foster, we help them do events. He is actually their junior leader in that. And he, the one time I can get him to talk is he will talk about dogs, and he will talk and tell people about the misinformation about pit bulls, right? So that's how he uses his voice. That's something he's defined that he's passionate about. He'll support me at events. He just doesn't want to talk, right? So we had a pride picnic. He's right there front and center, handing out information. He's carrying the table, right? He just isn't going to go get on the mic like my older one would. And so there's so many ways that you can encourage your kids in such a variety of ways to get involved, right? And just finding what speaks to them. And again, just driving home that importance of doing something. So what else is important? They're watching, right? Our kids are watching us. And so how do you then best model and guide them through your actions? So you can demonstrate that through your friends and your activities and experiences and actions. Your words are so powerful. Are you using positive language when you talk about other people that don't look or believe things that you do, or that type of thing? Are you using derogatory terms? Do you laugh at jokes that are inappropriate, share memes that are inappropriate, right? These are all things that they see. And if you're not living what you're saying for them to do, then they're going to see that as well and not take you for what you really mean them to do. Are you inclusive and empathetic, right? Even, right, like, do you treat the person who rings up your groceries or serves your food with as much dignity and respect as you do somebody who's making more money than that, somebody who's leading an organization or a business? Do you treat all of those humans with the same amount of dignity and respect? Because they're watching that too. Service to others, right? Are you being a true servant leader? What are you praising and what are you prioritizing? So if you have a certain amount of family time, are you constantly prioritizing other achievements, or are you finding time to do good? And then, of course, working on unpacking your own stuff regularly. So looking at your own bias and unlearning and commitment to learning, right? And again, it's okay to be transparent, to call it out. Understanding your privilege, using real life examples, showing and demonstrating empathy, truth and research and seeking knowledge, right? And then just figure out where you are. Are you an ally or an advocate or an accomplice? And how can you continue to grow alongside them? So that probably all feels a little bit overwhelming, maybe. But the biggest thing is this, and this is what, when I talk to anybody who says, hey, Becky, help me do better. Help me teach my kids, or help me learn. Like, it's overwhelming. There's so much out there. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do next. Honestly, just do something and focus on doing something today that makes for a better tomorrow. This is literally the simplest way to say it. Just make a commitment to do something, and continue. I use the reference all the time, moving the needle. Just move the needle. If you're here today, get there tomorrow, and just keep going. The process never ends when it comes to this stuff. Unfortunately, there are always going to be groups of people or individuals that are facing inequity or harm, that need an ally or an advocate or an accomplice to support them. And so just staying engaged in the work, keeping your eyes open and being aware, and just committing to doing something. It really is that simple from that standpoint, right? And just helping grow and do something better for tomorrow. All right. So now I would not, I'd be remiss not to at least do a little not so shameless plug here. So one of the things that I am, and I'm throwing this out there because I know we have at least some Hendricks County folks on here. I'm the chair for the Hendricks County Alliance for Diversity. So I've got to throw the plug on there to join us if you're not already a member. We have student memberships that are free as well. But if it's not the Hendricks County Alliance for Diversity, if you're not in Hendricks County, find the Hamilton County one or the Marion County one. Tap into those groups. A lot of times you can see on the left side there the types of events and training opportunities that we've done for free for our community over here. And anybody can come to those. So if you're not in Hendricks, don't feel like you can't hop on over and see me and anything else either. But we're holding events celebrating things like Black History or MLK. We're having resident conversations, training about pronouns and LGBTQ 101 sessions. Pride picnics, right? Talking, where this diversity series came out of some conversations. So look for local resources to get engaged with too, because that will help you go, oh, I didn't know it was this month was Hispanic Heritage. How do I teach my kids about this, right? And there's so much going on with groups like us across the entire state that you can tap into. All right, so questions.
Well, we have one question. Thank you so much, first of all, Becky. I have a note here of everything that I'm taking away. I really, really, really liked how you said information can dismantle your own bias. I think that struck a chord with me, just to always be learning and growing in my own information. And then the idea of like having children's books, you're right. We totally focus in on those picture books and oftentimes forget to like keep it going. So I appreciated that too. And the whole idea that we're going to mess up little and big. It's just about taking those steps forward. So yeah, I appreciate everything you said. We do have one question right now. And if you're thinking through some other questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat box or unmute yourself. But the first question is, could you recommend some good movies to help expose elementary children to social justice? Maybe something more visual than a book, like a movie or even a show or something like that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really great things out there. Depending on how old elementary, if we're talking first grader versus like a fifth or sixth, depending on your school structure. I really like the video series Conversations with Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man is a really great small short video series. He breaches a lot of topics. There's actually an adult book version of that as well as the videos that he does. And now there's a kid's book version to accompany that as well. I think that's a really good video series. I think documentaries are a great way. Even The Hate You Give is a great movie. Again, just be aware, right? There's going to be some language. There's going to be some things you might need to explain. But I think, and this is probably the you'll see my parenting style here, but I'm kind of one of those, like, if I'm sitting next to my kid, I'm pretty much almost okay that they see anything because I can explain it to them and have that conversation, and I can pause it right then and go, ooh, that was a lot. I feel the emotion that you're feeling, right? Let's talk through this or whatever, right? So I think that those are some, again, Hate You Give would be great. Uncomfortable Conversations. True Justice is a recent documentary that's really good. Just Mercy is a connected piece that's the movie version, but now the documentary is about that individual, Brian Stevenson. That's some good stuff. There's tons of great things out there for sure.
Thank you so much. Any advice for dismantle bias and prejudice when you come across with an adult?
That's a great question, right? And we come across it all the time, especially the environment the last handful of years has gotten more and more of that happening, where people are a little bit maybe more emboldened to say things in front of people and they might not have before. So honestly, I think you have to look at the relationship structure a little bit there, right? And sometimes you're not going to change someone's opinion in a 30-second rebuttal response, right? You're not going to change it probably on Facebook. You're not going to change it. One of my favorite things to do, honestly, is to just flip and ask them the question. What did you mean by, and reflect back to them what they said. I think that's one of the greatest things, because honestly, there are so many people who say things about a group of humans and they have no idea, honestly, what they're really saying, right? They've picked it up from social media somewhere, some talking point somewhere, misinformation or whatever, right? And so they say, oh, those people are this. And if you just say, well, what do you mean by this? A lot of times they can't answer because they don't really know, right? And immediately they're typically that ends the conversation. Honestly, that truly is one of my favorite ways. I just saw the question come in with close family members. It's kind of the same thing, right? We are seeing a really hostile environment lately. And so it's not, people doing diversity work, we're being told like, we're creating this environment. We're not creating it. It's just being uncovered, right? And so I really think reflecting back to them and asking them what they meant or why they said something is truly the best way to dismantle, like kind of just blows up the whole conversation most times. And then I think being armed with information, I think that's one of the most valuable things you can do. So if they make a blanket statement about a group of people or a religion or something like that, right? And you can say, oh, really? That's interesting. I read that. And you insert a fact right there, right? Chances are they probably didn't read anything. And at some point, cut your losses, because you can't always move the needle right that moment. But I would say just continue to reflect it back, drop nuggets of information. And at some point, right, my hope is at some point we have enough people in the world that make it uncomfortable for people to speak those things, that people stop speaking them and stop feeling them and realize maybe they need to reevaluate their own thoughts.
Thanks, Becky. I know that is a struggle. Every day we experience something like that. This has been so great, Becky. I super appreciate it. Again, I think there's a lot of information here that I'm just taking in as well. And I think I'm going to be having some questions in the next couple of days, just as I move forward. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thanks for everybody who hopped on and is engaging with these ideas and thoughts. It's all we can do is grow and teach our own kids to do the same thing. And eventually we'll get there, right? So thank you for your commitment. Reach out seriously with any questions at all. I love helping people navigate this space, and especially when it comes to kids. I'm a firm believer that kids truly are going to be what changes our future, right? And so any way that I can help you help them become these leaders and advocates in their own spaces, I am down for doing that.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.